Welcome to those who are on Zoom and able to join us. Tonight is a very special kind of double header great Shabbat, although they're all great. So tonight we are celebrating with Shabbat with a beat, but we're also joining literally hundreds of synagogues across the country in repro, which is not, we're not reproing somebody, we're not repossessing. This is repro as in reproductive Shabbat. So the theme of our evening is, and appropriately to our Parsha, which is Exodus 22, you shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. But we're really thinking specifically tonight about the freedom that women have had to fight many, many years, often with male allies. A few of them are here in the room to achieve. So our music selections tonight are almost all, not all, but almost all women composers. And so we'll be trying to capture that spirit. And then we have a guest that we'll be introducing a little later on. So to get us in the mood, I have been to do something Sephardic with Jeff, since he plays the oud and plays it so beautifully. And years ago fell in love with Judy Frankel and all of her music. So tonight we're going to do her song Shabbat. I'm going to read you the words, and then I will sing it and Jeff will play it. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful poem that is written in Judeo-Spanish. So for those of you who actually speak Judeo-Spanish, please excuse my pronunciation. I'm going to do the best I can. So here are the words in English. I remember my grandmother, how every Friday afternoon she would always talk to her daughter-in-law, my mother. Come, precious daughter, take off your apron, put on a clean dress, for Shabbat is arriving. The food is all ready, the table is set, the candles have been lit, your husband has come home. Shabbat. I'd like to invite Karen Oakley up to bring in the lights of Shabbat. Please rise if you are able. And once she has them lit, we'll make 3 circles. Bring in all those blessings. Think of your mother, your grandmother, all the women who have made their choices for you to be here. Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlikneh shel Shabbat. Amen. Shabbat shalom, Karen. Thank you. Please wish those next to you a Shabbat shalom. All right. Shabbat shalom. So you have a poem by one of my favorite poets whose poetry I've brought to our services and to our learnings together before. Linda Paston sadly passed away on January 30th, 2023, and so I thought it was appropriate to include one of her poems in tonight's service. So I'm going to ask my other half, David, to read that. This is on the steps of the Jefferson Memorial.
We invent our gods the way the Greeks did, in our own image, but magnified. Athena, the very mother of wisdom, squabbled with Poseidon like any human sibling until their furious tempers made the sea writhe. Zeus wore a crown of lightning bolts one minute, a cloak of feathers the next. As driven by earthly lust, he prepared to swoop down on Leda. Despite their power, frailty ran through them. Like the darker veins in the marble of these temples we call monuments. Looking at Jefferson now, I think of the language he left for us to live by. I think of the slave in the kitchen downstairs.
If you'll join me now at pages 138 to 139 as we bring in the Sabbath bride with Lecha Dodi. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and then we'll rise and turn to the doors in the back to welcome the Sabbath bride. And with that, the Shekhinah is with us, blessing us on this very, very important Repro Shabbat. We'll now turn to Shalom Aleichem, page 142. Please join us. We're going to be doing the Debbie Friedman version, and we need your voices as well. So, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, Malachei HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Please turn now to page 144 and rise if you are able. Yitkada, Yitkada, Shemei Rabbi, V'yama Divra V'rechechute, V'yamlich Malchute, B'chayechon Uv'yomechon, Uv'chaye Decho Beit Yisrael, Bahagala, Bahagala, Uv'yitzmahan Kariv, V'yimaru Amen. Yeheshme Rabba Navara, Le'alim Me'amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach Vishtabach, V'yit ba'ar, v'yit roman, v'yit naseh, v'yit hadar, v'yit ale, v'yit ala, shemei b'kudesha berechu, lehilam im kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yama, v'yimaru, amen, and remain standing. Please be seated. And we turn to page 148 for Ma'ariv. Again, as the days become a little longer and we don't have to get up in the darkness and go to bed and come home in the darkness, we are grateful for both those changes from daylight to night and from our seasons. I saw our first daffodils the other day. That always gives me a thrill. I'm still enough of a Northeasterner that those daffodils are just like, yes, although they usually happened in March and April. It's so nice to have them earlier in February. So, David, I'm going to ask you and all of you join along to read Ma'ariv Aravim in English on page 140.
Together, blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tseavot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ma'arivi Aravim.
We're now going to do another one of my favorite Devi Friedman. This is Ahavat Olam. Please be seated and turn to the Vahafta. David, I'm going to ask you to read that in English. There you go. Please join.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohim Emet.
So normally at this time, for those of you who are expecting it, we would do Mi Chamocha, which is a lovely song, and it helps us get that sense of what it needs to, gather those fears, set them aside, and cross that sea. But again, since tonight we are thinking of all of the women and what they have done to help give us all freedom, instead of doing Mi Chamocha, we're going to do Debbie Friedman's Miriam's song. So you have the words in your handout. I'm going to need a little help, especially from the women, because this is your song. All right. And this is another one that kind of just rocks out. Jeff is going to do the timbrel. Right? Rick's going to get us going. David's going to be pounding away at the guitar. And ladies, just imagine if you feel like dancing, you go for it. And if you look at the top of page 159, sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect. Well, with that energy, we are going into Hashkivenu, and again, this feeling a little quieter. This one always reminds me of a lullaby. So we'll take it down a bit. We will now enter Tefillah, the Amidah, standing prayers, so please do stand if you are able. Again, we'll pray together. If you remember the choreography, we're going to take 3 steps back, kind of get ourselves together, then 3 steps forward, because we are truly ready to stand before the ark. And then silent prayer for as long as you want, what's in your heart, what's written on the page, and then we'll proceed from there. Adonai sifataitita ufiagita hilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot U'Mevi Gula V'Bnei Bnehem L'Mod Shemo B'Ahava Melech Chozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Adonai V'chayei metim atav Rav Loshia Mashiv haruach umarid hagashem. Mechakeh chayim bechesed. Mechayim metim berachamim rabim. Somech noflim berofei cholim. Umatir atzurim. Umekayem emunato. Lishenei afar. Milchamocha b'gevorot, umito melach, melech menit u'mechayeh, u'matzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lechayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hametim. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, ukdoshim b'chol yom yalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, v'amecha Yisrael. To be latam be'ahava tekabel u'tehile ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael. Yisrael Amecha. Baruch atah Adonai she'otecha levadcha v'yira nahavo Nahavo, nah. Please be seated. And I need my band back up here for Shalom Rav, page 178. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael, Tasini Leolam. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael, Tasini Shalom.
that mood of peace, but also of urgency, I'm going to ask Karen Oakley to come up and introduce our guest speaker.
Shabbat Shalom. Claire Lipschultz is originally from Chicago and graduated from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, summa cum laude, no less. She received her Juris Doctorate from New York University as a Root Tilden Scholar. I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure it's very impressive. Claire is an attorney, a national feminist leader, an activist, and a writer. She is currently a national vice president of the National Council of Jewish Women, of the NCJW California State Policy Advocate, and a member of the board of directors of the Sacramento Section National Council of Jewish Women. In these capacities, she is an advocate for abortion access and reproductive justice, among other very active social justice issues. Claire started her career in 1976 as the executive director of the California Public Interest Research Group. She created the Consumer Health Advocacy Training Institute, funded by the National Science Foundation. And this is to educate marginalized communities about the economics of the healthcare delivery system and how to advocate in the public arena for affordable, quality, and accessible care. She moved to Washington, D.C. in 1980, where she served as assistant director to the Alpha Center for Health Planning, a health policy public think tank. She returned to California as an appointee of Governor Jerry Brown and joined a small team to negotiate the first public preferred provider organization in the country for the state's Medicaid Medi-Cal program, which later served as a model for other states. In 1983, she co-founded and was senior vice president of the Affordable Health Care Concepts, which was the nation's first PPO. She is married with 2 children, one a doctor and one a lawyer. And I love this last comment. She said, if she ever had a 3rd child, she would have made sure he was a rabbi.
That child could have been a she as well. Thank you. I think that introduction was probably about as long as my drosh. But thank you very much. And Repro, Shabbat Shalom to all of you. I'm honored to be here tonight, as Shabbat is an opportunity to pause and rest and take a step back from the rhythms of work. Repro Shabbat is an invitation to Jewishly imagine a world where everyone has greater access to reproductive health care, including abortion access and full bodily autonomy. For the 3rd year, the National Council of Jewish Women has invited Jewish communities of all types to honor this particular Shabbat annually. This coming weekend, more than 1,200 synagogues, Hillels, JCCs, and Jewish communities around the country will be marking Repro Shabbat. Thousands will learn what Judaism says about reproductive care, reflecting on Parshat Mishpatim, the Torah portion, which includes texts of many of the Jewish laws that protect fairness, equity, and justice in society, including the foundational source of Judaism's approach to reproductive rights and abortion. Abortion is permitted and sometimes even required if the life of the pregnant person is in danger. The mother's life and health takes precedence over the fetus, which is not yet considered a person in some readings and texts until 40 weeks, or until the head emerges, or until it takes its first breath. And some rabbinic sages affirm an expansive idea that mental health is akin to physical health needs of the pregnant person when considering abortion. And our Jewish values compel us to uphold the dignity of every human being, access to health care, To make decisions for their own lives, families, and well-being is fundamental to that dignity. To deny it, especially to those who are already marginalized by systemic discrimination, is an affront to Jewish values. Indeed, Jewish law, text, and values leads us to affirm reproductive freedom, not in spite of our religion, but because of it. And this is really borne out in, for example, the Pew Research poll, which found that 83% of Jews polled were in favor of keeping abortion legal. Yet a narrow Christian theology definition of when life begins now is being weaponized by the religious right to stake a moral argument as the basis for state laws which limit or prohibit abortion and other reproductive choices. A founding tenet of our country's of our country is religious freedom, both in individual practice and in the separation of church and state. It is meant to protect minority religions as a shield, not a sword. Our First Amendment rights as Americans and as Jews are abridged by these actions. Last year, I spoke to the congregation. Some of you may have heard my drash last year on Repro Shabbat. And I spoke about the tragedy that would befall millions of people if the Supreme Court overturned the 50-year precedent of a constitutional right to abortion. And in June of 2022, a cynical majority of justices did just that, wiping out federal protection of this right and leaving it up to a hodgepodge of state legislators and state courts to decide the most personal of decisions about bodily autonomy. 3 of the justices on the Supreme Court promised in their interviews with senators and at their confirmation hearings that they would uphold the precedent of Roe v. Wade. Well, they and the other 2 justices in the majority certainly did not. Reasoning that included one justice quoted a 17th century judge who said there's no such thing as marital rape, and amusing by another justice that the entire right to privacy underlying same-sex marriage and contraception should now also be reconsidered. So let's consider the real-world impacts of the Supreme Court decision now that it's 8 months later. 15 states have total or near total bans on abortions, with no exception for rape, incest, and in some instances, even the mother's life. As anticipated, a number of the state laws went into effect immediately after the Supreme Court decision. These were known as trigger laws. They were on the books, just ready for the Supreme Court's decision. And then other states quickly passed restrictive legislation, and the list continues to grow. And it is anticipated that at least half the states in the nation will become abortion deserts. This will result in touching real lives. 40 million women of reproductive age will be unable to get abortions in their home states. And if there is a federal revocation, which is now being attempted, of the FDA approval of mifepristone, I'm going to repeat that, it's mifepristone, it's also known as Miffy, which is used in medication abortions, there will be a total of 64.5 million women, the population, basically twice the population of California, of reproductive age, would lose access to medication abortion care. This number does not even include people who can get pregnant, but who don't identify as women. The overturning of Roe already has had disproportionate impact on people with marginalized identities and communities that have long experienced systemic oppression in this country. Those who are poor, people of color, LGBTQ folks, those who are unhoused, those with disabilities. If you have resources to pay for childcare, money for travel expenses, a job where you can take time off and still keep your job, if you have a supportive family, perhaps you could travel to a state that permits abortions if you find yourself pregnant. But that is not the case for so many. And the negative impacts of forced pregnancy continue intergenerationally. With the fall of Roe, Indigenous, Black, and Latino populations experienced large absolute increases in travel time to abortion facilities. Black women are more likely to experience adverse birth outcomes as a result of abortion restrictions, more so than other women. Even before the overturn of Roe, Black women were 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women because of the systemic racism in the medical system and elsewhere. And so abortion bans and forced births are especially deadly to those who hold those identities. Before Roe was overturned, 1 in 5 trans people who have ever been pregnant have resorted to unsafe abortion methods, often after being denied care due to their gender. For disabled people, being denied abortion care when it is needed can be life-threatening or cause permanent physical harm, because not everybody is able to carry a pregnancy safely to term. And abortion bans can adversely impact the health, if not the life, of any pregnant person. Post-Roe, there have been stories of emergency care not being given because doctors are uncertain if they can provide an abortion service which might be needed to save a person's life. Not satisfied with overturning Roe and giving states the authority to prohibit or restrict surgical abortions, the anti-abortion movement is now trying to have a way to restrict abortion nationally. They are suing this particular group, which is being backed by the movement. They're suing the Federal Drug Agency, to revoke its 23-year-old approval for medicine used in medication abortion, the MIFI that I spoke about earlier. It's one of 2 medications that has been around for 23 years. It has a safety record even better than Tylenol. And the plaintiffs suing the FDA are saying that it's unsafe, that there hasn't been a proven track record, that it didn't go through the trials that it needed to go through. What this will mean, if they are successful, is that the FDA will have to revoke its approval. It'll be taken off the market, and the people who have relied on medication abortions through the years will no longer have that ability. And by the way, at this point, that represents 50% of the abortions in this country. So just imagine what that means. Even states like California, where we have a slew of protections, will, if that is revoked, California will not be able to dispense, California providers will not be able to dispense the necessary drug for half the abortions that are taking place today. And by the way, it's not just abortion services that are impacted by these rulings. Fertility treatments like IVF are also endangered by state laws, which claim that personhood begins at fertilization. Well, this is all pretty grim, but we must not despair. Our informed collective action is necessary to preserve abortion access, and we can make a difference. I'm going to give you a few examples. In the national November midterm election, abortion access was one of the top issues when voters were deciding how they were going to vote. Elections matter. California passed Proposition 1 last November, which enshrined the right to abortion and contraception in the California Constitution. And this has been true in several other states in the last number of months. So instead of allowing this crucial right to be subject to the vagaries of political winds of a particular state's legislature, it is now enshrined in several states' constitutions, including California. California has been a leader in legislation to protect those coming from out of state for services and to shield providers who perform abortion services. And the California Future of Abortion Council that was put together by Governor Newsom proposed over 10 bills which became law in the past legislative session, which facilitates delivery of services to those in need. And there are additional bills being introduced this session. Abortion clinics in California and other places where it's still allowed have expanded operations and training to meet the increase in demand from those who live in hostile states. And then there's always the courts. Multiple lawsuits on the right side have been filed challenging abortion restrictions on constitutional religious freedom and other religious liberty grounds. Faith and interfaith groups are coming forward as plaintiffs, or they are writing amicus briefs on behalf of those cases, including NCJW. Today, those of us with some amount of social or economic power who hold privileged identities must use our power and privilege to lift the voices and stories of those most impacted by abortion bans. We must listen to the leaders of marginalized groups and follow their lead. We are told in the Talmud that silence is consent, and we will not consent to this injustice. And we are told that we are not required to complete the work, as you all know this, but nor are we permitted to desist from it. So I'd like to offer a few suggestions on how to lift your voices. First, I'm going to suggest that you donate. Donate your money, however much you can, to organizations that increase access to abortion services and provide them. I want to thank you for those who have made donations to those various entities. And I'm very proud to announce how the Jewish community writ large throughout the country really rallied to the NCJW call for funds. NCJW created the Jewish Fund for Abortion Access just 7 months ago, and we have raised from the community over $1 million. This money was entirely donated to a national abortion fund called the National Abortion Federation, and they have a hotline that provides case management and dollar assistance to people who have to travel from one place to another and incur the expenses of not being able to obtain an abortion in their home state. That was an amazing showing. I will tell you, because I know the inside scoop, we had hoped for we were hoping we could get to $100,000 when we started this campaign. And because we're Jews and we understand, people donated in small amounts and in big amounts to get to the $1 million mark, which translated into helping 4,000 people in these last months. There's a need for this continued kind of assistance. There are funds that work within California. One of them is called Access RJ. Planned Parenthood and other service organizations need your dollars in order to expand their services. It is expected that there will be a 300% increase that the clinics will see as a result of out-of-state folks coming here, and that is only going to increase as medication abortion becomes less available. Secondly, become advocates. Use your voice, use your time, use your letter writing and your postcard writing capacity. There are state and federal laws that are being that are on the books, that are being brought up in legislatures today that need your support. So when you hear about the federal law that would, the federal bill, which would require that abortion services be covered for federal employees, which it is not, or for Medicaid employees, which it is not, or when you hear the state of California is posing a bill that'll help pay for out-of-state folks coming here and have a registry of funds that people can go to, or shield laws so providers are not afraid to perform services. You know, pick up the phone, write that email, and we will tell you how to do that. Again, I'm going to plug NCJW here just because we do operate something called a rapid response team. And we let people know when there is something coming up that can use your support. They'll give you all the tools to do it. Thirdly, educate yourself. Educate your family, educate your colleagues about abortion, about the facts. Talk about it as an essential healthcare service, which is what it is. Use the word abortion to destigmatize it. People have been uncomfortable in the past saying that. And what it does is just make it seem as though it's something unseemly or rare, and it is not. Language matters in how we perceive abortion. Use pregnant person, not woman, to be inclusive of those who can be pregnant, but don't self-identify as women. You notice I did use woman and women several times through my talk tonight. It's sometimes hard not to, but it is all about being inclusive. Share your personal abortion story. That further destigmatizes this procedure. 1 in 4 women, in this case it is 1 in 4 women of reproductive age, let me put it this way, 1 in 4 women will have an abortion during their reproductive years. It's not uncommon. And I'll stand here and set an example. I had an abortion. I had an abortion at a time when I was in law school, and it was a wrong place, wrong time, wrong partner. And I was so grateful that I could go to a Planned Parenthood and be treated with respect and with dignity, and then be able to make that choice and move on with my life. And then, importantly, inform yourself about the Jewish law and texts undergirding support for abortion access so that we can retake the moral narrative. It isn't just the Christian point of view that is moral. We have our valid morality as well. And then finally, be of service. There are many volunteer opportunities at various clinics in the Sacramento area, particularly Planned Parenthood. NCJW is involved in writing thank you notes to clinics. Just thank you notes, thanking the very overworked staff for the work they do day in and day out, and what they have to endure as they walk in and out of the clinics, with the anti-abortion people screaming at them. There are numerous opportunities, and I encourage you to find them and to engage in them. And finally, again, with regard to that, I would invite all of you to join the NCJW 73 Forward Committee, where we come up with all sorts of good plans for how we can move the needle on abortion access. So I thank you for your time today. I look forward to fighting with you for all that is just and good and right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was thinking about when I was a 17-year-old and not able to chat with my family about what I needed, and depended on Planned Parenthood to be there for me. And then again, a few years later, after I had actually my second child, We were living in Pennsylvania, and although we had a Democratic governor, he was an Irish Catholic, Casey, and along with a group from Now, headed to Harrisburg and, shared the stories that are so important to be shared that gave us, and let's think about what tonight's portion is. What does freedom mean when we leave Egypt if it doesn't mean freedom for our bodies, for who we are? And let's do it for our daughters and our granddaughters. So thank you, Claire. Hope you have a chance to chat with her during our oneg afterwards. I'm going to invite our band back up and to follow that with a song that you have in your handout. This is Julie Silver, and it's appropriately Be the Light for Justice. I'll be the light for justice. I'll be the light for love. I'll be the light shining in the dark. Every day will be a day where I stand. Reach out my hand, be the light for justice. I'll be the light for justice. I'll be the light for love. I'll be the light shining in the dark. Every day will be a light where I stand. Reach out my hand, I'll be the light for justice. Be the light for justice. Be the light for justice. I'll be the light for justice. With that spirit, we go into Misha Barak. Claire, I think you might have taken some lists with you. It's part of your, I think I have some Kaddish lists and some.
If you want to do them, you can.
You can, but I think I'm gonna need some lists. There's some York site. All right. So here is our Misha Barak list, and then I will, Rick, if we've got anybody there, let me know, and I will walk around to the great accompaniment of my friends up here. I have Penny Clark, Janice Schulman, Bendon John and Juliana Blue, Arlen Opper, Sandy Lewin, John Noxon, Faith Gobedy, Meredith Rosenberg, Carol Wismiller, Jerry Stanky, Benjamin Hess, Sandra Albert, Scott Huckleby, Joe and Becky Brockman, Marna McInerney, Maida Simpson, Bill Roselle, Raina Greenfield, Mark Snyder, Stanley Mendelson, Celia Kessler, Macy Linder. Do we have any others on Zoom?
Be the source of strength, who bless all ones with loss. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. With the Shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
All right. Roy, do you know who's doing announcements? Would you like to come do them, or do you want? Okay, here you go.
Shalom. Thank you, David and Sheree and the band. Wonderful service, and for our guest speaker, very moving, and appreciate your being here. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Torah study will be on Zoom, facilitated by Bob Bennett. And then this Sunday, in honor of President's Day, there's no Neshama. Next Thursday, February 23rd, is the CBS board meeting at 7 o'clock. We're encouraging people who can to come in person, but there will also be Zoom available. Everyone is welcome, whether you're a board member or not. And if you'd like the Zoom link, just please reach out to Jenny Jeffrey and she can forward it to you. Join us next Friday on February 24th for Shabbat services led by David and Roberta. Thank you for stepping up while the rabbi is still in Israel. She did arrive safely, by the way. I got a text from her. And Saturday, February 25th, Torah study will be on Zoom. And I also want to thank Daniel Hess, who I think stepped up today and sponsored Koenig, which we'll all be able to partake of at the end of the service. So, Shabbat Shalom.
I'm going to take a moment and add that on March the 6th is our Purim Spiel. And if you are all interested in seeing your president in a way you've never seen him before, I invite you to come and join us as our president and yours truly provide you with some serious entertainment.
It's going to be quite the So if you look in your handout, often at this time we do either a prayer for our country and a prayer for Israel. But instead, I'd like you to join me in a prayer for reproductive freedom. God of our ancestors, we affirm that you have created each of us in your sacred image, endowed with the inherent right to dignity and autonomy. We ask that you guide us towards a caring and loving community and nation that reveres this dignity in each of us. We affirm that reproductive freedom, the sacred right to own the personhood of one's own body, is a fundamental part of the just society for which we strive in your name. We ask that you endow us with the strength and resolve we need, because the path that lays ahead is challenging, and we all need resilience, strength, and courage. We ask that you protect the most impacted and marginalized among us, because it is they who are most at risk. We do this work in your name, O God, because we are the compassionate, loving creations of a compassionate, loving, and just God. It is holy, sacred work. May our country become a place of liberty and justice for all, And may our care for one another include care and respect for each other's right to good and affordable health care, including abortion care, and the right to live safely and securely as we each follow our path of conscience and the God we each do or do not believe in. And we say together, Amen. Please rise for Aleinu on page 586. Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol, l'tei kedula yotzer breshi, shelo asana kigaye haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot hadama, shelo samcha kenu kahem, v'gohar aleinu k'chol hamona, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz, v'yashev v'karo v'shamayim mima'al, Hushkinatu zo, v'goveh miramim, Hu Eloheinu ein od, Hemet Malkeinu Ephesulatov, Kakatu, Utorata, Neadat Hayo, Behoshudecha, Elevadecha, Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim, Bashamayim Nimal, V'aharetz, V'aharetz, Mitachat ein od, v'nehemar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, U'shemo echad. Please be seated. We now move into Mourner's Kaddish. We will share those who have passed in the last 11 months, and then those whose yortzites that we are honoring today. Please rise if someone near and dear to you is mentioned. Ann Ball, Laura Sender Lawrence, Judah Rosen, Elaine Kaplow, Carlos Garcia, Eric Friedman, Herschel Adler, Barbara Norman, Magali Grace Verano Apasoa, Murray Steingart, Gary John Newman, Ronald Clayfer, Chris Bagoon, Cecile Ash, Chris Wynot, Ethan Nava, Bernard Elliott Esrelou, Judith Spivak, Bill McDonald, Alan Blickstein, Carol Trachtenberg, Daniel Yoshby. Are there any other recent deaths? We now move to those whose yortzites we are celebrating.
Sylvia Ash, Richard Bix, Herman Birch, Jacob Glasser, Hugo Breyer, Sally Braun, James Orville Brown, Margaret Buchler, Sam H. Cohn, Leo Edelstein, Alvin Frey, John Frink, Cecilia Garcia, Mary Giacomoto, Mildred A. Greenberg, Verna Dean Hull, Philip Kaplow, Estelle Kaplow, Anne Gilcrease, Abraham Kushner, Florence Levy, Sylvia Kurtz-Lewis, Larry Lieberman, Ralph Maureen, Karen Casey Opper, Annie Opper, Bernard Ordell, Melanie Pollock, Barrick Potok, Lola Potok Blatt, Bessie Reimer, Rena Sachs Davis, Sarah Sindri, Howard Thayer, Jeanette Toolman, Bernard Udain, Percy Warner, Marion Whitehead.
Any other yard sites? We also stand as a community for all of those who have died in wars, our own 6 million. And I would add, since this is Reproductive Shabbat, those who have died because they did not have safe abortion, access to abortion. For all of those, we say together, Zichanam Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing, and please join me on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach yeruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach, le'olam olamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yitada v'yitale v'yitala shemei dekudesha birachu. Le'ela mimko bechata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amaran b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yoko Yisrael, v'imru amen. Ose shalom v'imramav, huyase shalom, aleinu v'yoko Yisrael, v'imru amen. Please be seated. And for our closing song, we have a song called the Circle Chant. Again, the words are in your handout, so we're hoping you'll join us. We're going to do it 3 times. First time it'll be just the melody. And this is by Linda Hirschhorn. Second time around, we'll add a little harmony and have the assistance. Okay? Like it, stand up, join hands, get the feel. Circle around for freedom, circle around for peace, for all of us in prison. Circle for peace, circle for the planet, circle for Shabbat Shalom. Please join us.